Welcome to Inside Games, the only gaming news show brave enough to wonder what would God of War look like in VR.
Well, given that we're fully in the era of sad dad games, maybe something a little more like this.
How come you don't want me, man?
I can smell those Game of the Year awards coming in already.
Yeah, make room, Sony. Stock up on that trophy polish, because Sony's officially announced the PlayStation VR2 on January 4th on the official PlayStation blog. This follows a post from nearly a year ago where they confirmed that VR2 would, in fact, be a thing. And then another post in March 2021 where they showed the controllers for the first time, which are now officially called VR2 Sense controllers.
The most recent update reveals a handful of juicy technical specs on the forthcoming hardware, but unfortunately lacks any info on what the headset looks like, its price, availability, or backwards compatibility.
Yeah, they're gonna trickle that stuff out. That's what we call PR beats. But you know, this is a glass half full show most of the time. So let's get to the good news.
So for starters, the PSVR 2 headset will include one of the highest resolution panels, which will mean you'll see everything in crystal clarity when you hug your long-lost son in VR. At 2000 by 2040 pixels per eye, the PSVR 2 will only be out-resoluted by the HTC Vive Pro 2, which actually offers 2448 by 2448 pixels per eye.
But the PSVR 2 is higher than the Quest 2's resolution of 1832 by 1920 per eye, and significantly higher than the Valve Index's 1440 by 1600 per eye.
That makes sense, because those were all came up a couple of years ago here now at this point. It gets better too. PSVR 2 will use HDR OLED panels, which should offer darker blacks, more vivid colors than the fast-switching LCD panels used in most VR headsets.
There are tons of other little technical goodies too, some of which make the PSVR 2 way easier to use than the first-gen PlayStation VR. The entire unit only uses one USB-C cable, which is a godsend, good lord, given that the original used a whole cluster of ribbon cables and a separate processing box that required its own external power.
And you had to turn it on manually. It also did not support HDR pass-through. And the worst part of it, you had to use the PlayStation Move controllers, which are the stupidest thing in the world.
The PSVR 2 will track motion via external cameras on the headset as well, negating the need for an external camera connected to the PlayStation, which is great, even less cords to plug in and fewer expensive bits flying around your apartment when you haul off and put your hand through your television.
Who among us hasn't punched a hole through a $500 television when in the throes of hard VR gaming? Basically VR pastime when you throw a controller or hit the wall or slam your forehead into something.
Sony's also extending their obsession with high-def rumbles, as the PSVR 2 headset will actually have haptic feedback in the helmet.
Whoa.
Well, it maybe not a helmet, we don't know yet, but a single built-in motor will rattle your head in VR that, according to Sony, could allow you to, quote, feel a character's elevated pulse during tense moments, the rush of objects passing close to the character's head, or the thrust of a vehicle as the character speeds forward.
Although the fact that it's a single motor means that you probably won't get the outrageous feedback you get with the DualSense controller, which means you will not be able to feel every strand of hair on your head wave in the breeze. Beautiful anime girl farts in your face. What video game in Sony VR has an anime girl farting in your face?
It doesn't exist yet, not that I'm aware. I haven't played the whole library. That just means that there's an untapped market out there. Regardless, haptic feedback in a VR headset is a first, as far as I can tell, which just gets us one step closer to having our entire bodies massaged by rumble motors as we play a game. This is what I wonder about. Would shaking the entire headset cause the display to like vibrate in front of your eyes? I mean, surely Sony wouldn't include it if that were actually the case. It feel like the lenses are so close and they have to kind of be locked to your eyeballs that when the whole thing's it makes it seem like it might mess up what you're actually looking at, but Sony probably knows what they're doing, right?
Headset has one more big technical goodie, eye track. So not only can this be used for gameplay mechanics, like a game could actually track and respond to what you're looking at, but it will also enhance the game's rendering with, this is, I'm gonna say it, and I've never heard this term before, it's the first time, Foveated Rendering. Is that how I say it?
You nailed it, Bruce.
Foveated Rendering, okay, all right.
Nobody knows what it is, but it sounds cool, doesn't it? Man, can you believe you've been gaming all these years on non-foveated games? You basically haven't played a video game yet. They don't exist.
Foveated rendering has been discussed in computer graphics for quite a while, but never implemented in a broadly functional way. So here's the gist. The PSVR 2 will track what your eyes are looking at and render that part of the game with increased detail and resolution. So everything else will kind of be a little blurred and rendered at lower fidelity outside of what your eyes are looking at, and that saves processing power. The idea is you really can't see the fine detail in your periphery anyway, so why waste those system resources rendering all that in high resolution if you're not even looking at it?
Yeah, similar techniques already exist in games like Mipmapping or LOD, which stands for level of detail. Have you ever noticed that when something in a game is really far away, it might look blockier or fuzzier, or it might actually move choppier, like animate in less frames? That's because game engines apply level of detail scaling based on the distance away from the game's camera. Assets that are further away from the camera take up less pixels on screen and are generally less noticeable, so they're rendered with less detail, which saves system resources.
By applying this to VR, a game can make sure your focal point is always high resolution and detailed, helping maintain the PSVR 2's 90 or 120 Hz refresh rates.
Overall, the PSVR 2's specs land on the high end of VR hardware. And while 0 cords would be ideal, just one cable is a vast improvement. And now let's just hope that the PSVR 2 isn't priced accordingly, because similarly spec'd VR headsets, the HTC Vive Pro 2 specifically, cost $800, and that's just for the headset. We're not even talking about the controllers.
What good are all those tasty specs without some hot video games to play like when an anime girl farts in your face? Never fear, because the PSVR 2 software is currently filled to bursting with one game. I mean, there's more than one, but they showed the one, but there's like 4.
Yeah, officially one. In addition to spilling the specification beans on the PSVR 2, Sony also announced Horizon Call of the Mountain from series developer Guerrilla Games and the UK-based Firesprite, who contributed to the Playroom VR and released The Persistence in 2020.
The game is super light on details at the moment, aside from a 15-second teaser they showed in which you snap awake in a Skyrim fashion on a boat before seeing a giant robo-dino stomp right over you.
Yeah, cool, I guess. It looks neat. It probably looks way cooler in VR. The fixed perspective of the teaser could imply that the game is a rail shooter, like you're just on the boat the whole time with Aloy locked in place on the boat as it cruises down the river, and then this guy's like, oh my god, a dino, and you gotta like VR shoot arrows at it, and then, oh, another dino, and you gotta, you know, maybe. That'd be lame. That'd be a bit lame. It's equally likely that this teaser just comes from an intro sequence where they tutorialize you on all the VR controls before letting you walk around and do your own thing.
Unsurprisingly, there's no release date for this game, because that would basically also tell us when PSVR 2 is coming out, which we also do not know.
But like we said, there are a grip of other games that have already announced PSVR 2 support, as listed by Upload VR. First, there's Runner from Truant Pixel, which describes itself as a, quote, VR anime-inspired motorcycle action game. And, you know, they probably call themselves that because they can't really just say, hey, it's the motorcycle chase from Akira in VR, which is also the coolest thing in the world.
There's also Samurai Slaughterhouse from Tab Games, which pretty much says it all in the name. Black and white aesthetic combined with lo-fi beats and bright red splashes of blood in the trailer, sort of reminiscent of 2009's Mad World, which is yet another game I don't remember. For anyone that reminisces way back into Mad World.
I'm gonna take a brief aside here to say that the soundtrack for Mad World slaps. I'm just gonna link it in the description. Go click on that. It's good shit.
Speaking of lo-fi, there's the game Lo-Fi from Iris VR. This ambitious game seeks to be the cyberpunk life sim that we've all been waiting for since seeing Blade Runner. Hopefully, the game will feature trophies for having an existential crisis and questioning your humanity and whether or not you are actually a robot.
Those developers largely, back when Sony said they were going to do VR2, they were just like, yeah, we'll be there. So aside from that, we don't have a lot of super confirmed games. Sony obviously has a library of last-gen VR games that could run on PSVR 2, but they haven't mentioned backwards compatibility yet. It's not necessarily a bad sign, though. Sony didn't say much about the PS5's backwards compatibility either, and it ended up being pretty great.
Yeah, there's kind of a big name bouncing around the room mill right now, though. And maybe you've heard of it. It's Half-Life.
We're talking about 2020's Half-Life Alyx, the game that Bruce and I bought an index for. There's some substantiating evidence to this, though. Back in 2020, Push Square asked Alyx designer Greg Coomer yep, about the game possibly coming to PSVR. At the time, Coomer... I'm sorry, he's a working professional, but damn it. The developer commented that they, quote, believe Sony's VR platform has been a huge success for the medium, and we assume that lots of Sony customers would love to experience this new chapter of Half-Life. And that Valve has, quote, not ruled anything out.
Coomer is saying there's a chance.
Yeah!
There's always a chance for the Coomer. It might be more than just a chance, too. Xbox Era podcast member Special Nick commented that he's been told that Valve and Sony have reached a deal to bring Alyx to PSVR 2.
Nick previously rang the Pavlovian gamer bell by claiming that Bloodborne was not only coming to PC, but there's also a full sequel and a remaster in development. None of those projects have been announced yet, which would be a good validation of his industry sources. But still, PSVR 2 seems like a natural fit for Half-Life Alyx, since the VR2 Sense controllers support finger touch detection, just like Valve indexes controllers.
This would also line up with a rather cryptic answer provided by Valve president Gabe Newell. This was during a Q&A session at a, wait for it, high school assembly in May 2021. When asked if Valve would return to publishing games on console rather than just on PC, Newell replied, quote, "You will get a better idea of that by the end of this year."
That was 2021, so adjusting for Valve time, makes sense that info would then land this year in 2022.
Well, Valve time would put it in like 2025, but whatever.
Perhaps Sony intended to announce PSVR 2 in 2021, but that announcement slipped, probably because of COVID and lots of other, chip shortages, et cetera, et cetera.
Either way, it seems more likely than not, really, at this point, that Half-Life Alyx will appear on PSVR 2, which is fantastic, as you were saying, Bruce. Not only is it it's just an amazing game, but more sales Half-Life gets, the more likely Valve will make more of them. And anything that motivates Valve to actually make and ship a video game is a very good thing.
Other easy-to-imagine PSVR 2 games include Gran Turismo 7, Hitman 3, No Man's Sky, Skyrim VR, Resident Evil Village, Star Wars Squadrons, Tetris Effect, Wipeout, Omega Collection, but as usual, we should just wait for the official word before counting our VR eggs, because those are just suggestions. They're just pie in the sky, fun to think about stuff.
Bruce, you got my noodle turning. So not only do you have anime fart in your face VR, but what about VR eggs? Who hasn't wanted to lay an egg in VR and spend days sitting on them, incubating those bad boys? Just imagine the haptic feedback when you pop one of those out.
Are you thinking about like Seaman? Like, remember Seaman on Dreamcast, but in VR?
No, I was talking about actually squeezing eggs out your butthole, but talking to a little seaman fish, that's pretty good too.
Lawrence, that's not VR, that's real.
Oh yeah, I guess I could do that, couldn't I?
Maybe VR was a mistake.
That's what the PlayStation Move controllers were for. Bruce, it all comes together.
Maybe VR was a mistake.